catch the latest news on our website tribune.net.ph and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tribune Now. The Daily Tribune is one with the nation in facing the COVID-19 crisis, and in line with this, the Daily Tribune Digital Edition and Press Reader is now available for free online. You can also download the Daily Tribune app on Apple Store for iOS users and Google Play for Android users to get the latest and most comprehensive news online. Daily Tribune is also inviting everyone to join its community Viber Katribu to get updates on the freshest and hottest news and entertainment stories of the day. Tarcito emoticons are also available on our community Viber. Just click on the link in this video to join.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Katribu. I'm Tina Maralit.
And I'm Coffee Manalo.
And this is Straight Talk.
With Daily Tribune. Kumusta, Tina? Miss you.
Good morning, partner. Matagal tayo hindi na partner.
Medyo nalipat ako ng ng ibang assignment. Kumusta ang weather?
Makulimlim na and I think our country is bracing for another typhoon, praying that it doesn't affect as many Filipinos as the previous weather disturbances.
Mula kay nagmula kay Quinta, then Rolly, Shawnee, Tonyo, and then may Ulysses.
So ingat-ingat lang po tayo mga kababayan, and let's listen to what our authorities
have to say para maiwasan. Follow all their warnings and their instructions on how to avoid casualties or damages to our properties.
Ayan.
And speaking sa ulan, speaking ulan, na kailangan natin mga lupain ng ating mga magsasaka.
Ang usapan natin for this morning, may kinalaman sa mga lupa. Yan. Tsaka, partner, kasi, I remember when I was still covering Malacanang, one of, I guess, two of the main thrusts of the Duterte administration. One is poverty alleviation and yung end to insurgency. And no less than President Rodrigo Duterte himself said that one way of addressing these problems is by distributing land to Filipinos, to the most deserving Filipinos, for them to have their own lands to till for their livelihood. So, para malaman natin kung yung mga tungkol dyan, at para makita natin talaga yung mga programa ng gobyerno,
let us welcome our guest, Department of Agrarian Reform Secretary
John Castriciones.
Good morning po, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, Brother John.
Hello, good morning, Tina. Good morning, Kasi. Good morning to all your viewers. I'm very happy that I was invited as a guest so that I will be able to shed light on some issues that our citizens would like to understand about the department.
Yes, we are happy to have you as well.
Thank you for being with us this morning.
For joining us this morning.
Yes.
So, Coffee, you want to fire away or ako muna?
Yeah, okay, sige.
Sige.
First.
So, Secretary, regarding this land reform program of the government, one of the 6-point agenda of the department is to increase the issuance of the certificates of land ownership awards. So, can you walk us through how the department is implementing this po?
Yeah, Tina, thank you for that question. By the way, it would be better if you just call me Brother John.
Sige, sir. Brother John.
So that we'll not be so formal about our question and answer. By the way, of course, the main mandate of the department actually is for land acquisition and distribution. And this is a program which, of course, addresses the social injustice of our land acquisition and distribution, considering that many of the lands here in our country are actually owned by very few people, very few landed people. And that is the reason why we would like to correct this injustice by distributing these lands to our ordinary farmers, particularly the tenants. And this is covered under Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or Republic Act 6657. Now, with regards to this function of the Department of Agrarian Reform, we have been competently addressing this mandate. As of now, as per our record, we have already distributed around 130,000 hectares. These are referring to privately acquired lands. And likewise, we have distributed CLOAs turned over from land bank to the farmers around 210,000 CLOAs. And that would be a total of around 330,000 CLOAs already distributed to our agrarian reform beneficiaries. I cannot cite the exact figures, not unless I would have the copies, because these are all big numbers. But basically, we have been competently distributing lands to our farmers because that is the main mandate of the Department of Agrarian.
So you talked about the social injustice among farmers, especially the big tracts of land in the country are owned by landlords or farm lords. But now these landlords are being replaced by developers. Especially there are cases that when CLOA awardees are forced to sell their lands to these developers because they want to have instant cash. So these farmlands are being converted into subdivisions, into malls. So how are we addressing this issue?
First and foremost, the law so provides that these CLOAs cannot be alienated or sold to any other person within the 10-year period. There's a restrictive period in which they can dispose of these lands, which were actually titled under the Certificate of Land Ownership Awards. And any transaction to that effect sold to any developers or to any private citizens without the permission of the Department of Agrarian Reform is definitely unlawful and illegal. And that is actually the main, should we say, the prohibition that the law so provides, and that is the reason why these lands have to be alienated. However, of course, as we all know, there have been circumventions being committed by a lot of land developers and some businessmen in order to acquire these lands. And definitely, what we are doing right now is we are in the process of trying to validate all these lands. It's already been alienated, allegedly. And once we are able to prove that these lands were actually formerly agricultural lands, which have been titled under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, then we have the right to get it back. And whatever transactions that have been entered into by the parties are rendered nugatory or not effective, considering that it is a gross violation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program.
Just to clarify, sir, the prohibition to sell these lands is only up to 10 years. After 10 years, they can sell their lands.
That's right. That's right. And on top of that, it should have been fully paid and fully settled, because this program was so designed that we get I'm just referring to the privately acquired lands, because there are also other lands which are being distributed by the Department of Agrarian Reform, which are not classified as privately acquired lands. Now, for privately acquired lands, which is the main bulk of the lands that we distribute, we get these properties from landowners, those which are 5 hectares and above. And thereafter, it will be distributed to our farmers. But the farmers have the obligation to pay the amortizations with land bank. But this is a very minimal amount which our farmers can so well afford. And if they are not able to fulfill the payment and they have disposed of it, then definitely it will be a violation of the law.
So, sir, in terms of in privately acquired lands, of course, andyan naman yung lagi yung possibility na may landowner resistance. And how is the department addressing this, and what other issues is DAR facing po?
Well, when I came into the department, definitely there were a lot of cases with regards to the resistance of some landowners to part with their lands. And because of this, some of them would resort to litigation, because this is also allowed under the law. They would bring the matter to the courts, and definitely because of that, there would be some delays in the acquisition of this land. Secondly, those landowners sometimes would resort to using armed men in trying to resist the acquisition of these lands. And because of that, because the farmers are so desirous to get hold of these lands, there ensues a violence between the parties, and as a result, many are either, of course, physically injured, and to the extent of some are die because of the violence that ensues between these two parties. And that is the reason why we in the Department of Agrarian Reform are doing our best to avoid all these confrontations and these situations by making representations with both parties, explaining to them their respective rights and what are the legal ways and means that they can utilize so that they would be able to avoid violence. And so far we are successful. Well, of course, we cannot deny the fact that there are some incidents or some situations wherein it totally went out of control. But so far we are faring out well because most of those situations wherein it would lead to violence were all avoided.
How do you how will you address this problem? Like, I'm a landlord, but I want to avoid this agrarian reform program of the government. Then what I'll do is I'll convert my farmlands into subdivisions or malls. Is there an authority or a power by the DAR to prevent landlords like me from converting my land or my farmlands
For it not to be
into
included,
conversion?
yeah.
So to avoid inclusion sa agrarian reform program.
Well, actually, that's not the solution. It's not conversion because conversion refers to those agricultural lands which have already been distributed and subsequently it was acquired by some individuals and they would like to convert it from agricultural to commercial, industrial, or residential purposes. What the landlords or landowners, I mean, would normally do is that they would have to protest the coverage of the land, or they would apply for exclusion of the said land from the coverage of the agrarian reform program. That is the solution to the problem if they don't want to be covered by comprehensive agrarian reform program, because it is mandatory that all lands prior to 2014, because in 2014 the notice of coverage, which is actually a process wherein it's the way within which we are able to cover these lands, have already expired way back 2014, and that is the reason why from 2014 onwards there are no more lands which have been served with the notice of coverage, and therefore what we are just covering right now are only lands which have been served with the notice of coverage up to 2014. So those are the solution. It's not conversion, but rather exclusion or exemption from the coverage of the comprehensive agrarian reform.
How can a landowner apply for exemptions?
The
So they have to
processor.
file. They have to file an application or a petition with the Department of Agrarian Reform, claiming that it is beyond the coverage of the comprehensive agrarian reform program.
So sir, since coming into the agency, gano'n na po karami yung mga landowners who applied for exclusion? If you could at least give us a ballpark figure.
Okay. For exclusion, I have some figures here. Let me just consult the numbers. For exclusion, well, Tina, let me just clarify, because I know that these are technical terms.
Yes, sir.
And I think we really have to explain it clearly to our citizens, particularly the farmers, that there are different kinds of actions that can be initiated by landowners in relation to agricultural lands. One is conversion. The conversion is when you would like to convert the use of an agricultural land into commercial, industrial, and residential. That's conversion. The other one is exemption or exclusion, which means that it cannot be covered under the comprehensive agrarian reform program. Therefore, the government cannot acquire it and have it distributed to our farmers. And there are other enumerated reasons why a certain agricultural land cannot be covered under the comprehensive agrarian reform.
Okay. All right.
So what are the distinction, conversion and exemption that are being used by landowners to avoid being covered by the land reform program?
One of which is, for example, prior to 1988, which was the effectivity of the comprehensive agrarian reform program. Let's say that the land was already reclassified during that time, and it was already it was no longer an agricultural land. That means that it can no longer be covered by the comprehensive agrarian reform program, because what is being covered under the CARP or Republic Act 6657 are only agricultural lands. And another one is if a certain agricultural land prior to 1988 have already been, let's say, partitioned, and it was already inherited, given to the heirs of a certain landowner, and as it has been subdivided to the heirs, it is already less than 5 hectares each for all the heirs, then definitely it can no longer be covered by the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. And these matters have to be manifested through an application and a petition with the Department of Agrarian Reform so that it can no longer be covered under the Republic Act 665.
Yeah, follow-up?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. How do you monitor whether the distribution of land is really impacting positively the lives of farmer recipients? And
What kind of monitoring does DAR do, sir, regarding this?
The good thing about the department, Tina, and of course, is that COMPI, is that we have the biggest number of personnel under the department. As a matter of fact, as of our latest counting, I think we have around 9,000 employees. And we have employees in the regional level, in the provincial level, municipal level, and even in the barangay. And because of this, we have ways and means on how to monitor our agrarian reform beneficiaries. And not unlike in other departments wherein their functions are devolved to the local government units. For our department, we have personnel up to the barangay level, and because of this, they have their own taskings and functions to see to it that all the so-called mandates are to be delivered and our agrarian reform beneficiaries are monitored as whether or not they are in compliance with the mandates of the law that they must have to fulfill.
So, Brother John, going back to the the restrictions on the CLOAS that you've mentioned earlier, no, landowners and even the beneficiaries, sometimes they would circumvent the law para maibenta yung nai-award na lupa sa kanila. And there are instances that local government officials are in cahoots with them. So, namomonitor niyo po ba ito at ano ang ginagawa ng DAR tungkol dito?
Well, we are able to monitor. And because of this, we are actually getting back all those lands which have been alienated unlawfully and illegally. As a matter of fact, we have initiated the cancellation of many CLOAS, which have initially or originally been awarded to some farmers, but subsequently thereafter, it landed on the hands of some businessmen and some other officials, I should have said. And because of this, we cancel the CLOAS, and we get back the lands, and we reallocate them to the farmers who are really willing to till the soil. And sad to say, this has been a bit rampant in the past. But now we are trying to correct this injustice, which of course defeats or circumvents the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform.
Follow-up question about that. What happens is if a high-end subdivision or communities were constructed on lands that were covered with CLOAS under the prohibition period, what can the government do about it? And because big developers will simply wait for the 10 years prescription period, and justice is always delayed to benefit the guilty. So how will the government address this issue?
Well, we call that illegal conversion. We call that illegal conversion because before you can construct any structure in an agricultural land, they must have to apply for a conversion from the Department of Agrarian Reform. Now, if they would have to build structures there without the permission or without the so-called conversion order coming from the department, then this is already a clear violation of the conversion law, and therefore it would be considered as illegal conversion or premature conversion if they have a pending conversion application and yet it has not yet been approved, but they have already started to build some structures there. That's premature conversion. But if they did not apply, they don't have any pending application and yet structures have already built on agricultural lands, these are called illegal conversions. And these are all criminally liable. They can be criminally liable for this. We can initiate actions in courts for a violation of illegal conversion. And we have already filed some cases in relation to this. And with the rest, of course, we need some evidence to show proof that there was really an illegal conversion. So we conduct investigations or what we call on-site inspections, and we are mandating our personnel and officials to make the necessary investigations and file the necessary cases in courts.
Can the government sequester these lands?
What do you mean sequester?
Yung mga or get back or confiscate these lands
kung halimbawa na develop na po.
involved in illegal conversion?
Yeah, of course. That is the purpose of which we file cases against them and get back the property. We would have to deny, to get back the property, and then these farmers originally awarded with the CLOAS will be permanently disqualified to become recipients of the CLOAS, and then we will reallocate them to some farmers who are really willing to till the soil.
Meron na po bang mga kaso o mga tao na prosecute or found criminally found guilty na mga
of illegal conversion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, there are. Although there is a certain problem here, Confi and Tina, because the law seems to be defective, and we have been calling the attention of our legislators on this, because when they define the conversion, illegal conversion, is that there must be an intent. That is the term, the intent to commit a violation against the law. But how will you be able to prove intent?
Yes.
Intent is something that is difficult to prove.
Yes.
It must be something deliberate. So there must be a change of the definition of what illegal conversion is. Unless this definition of illegal conversion is changed in such a way that it cannot be circumvented because of the word intent, then it is difficult, very difficult for us to really prosecute cases against violators of illegal conversion.
Kasi pwede lang sabihin na hindi ko alam eh.
Hindi ko alam yung batas eh. Binenta lang sa akin eh.
Sinasabihan na namin yung mga legislators natin na they have to change the definition of illegal conversion. And one thing more, Confi and Tina, let me just add. The issue of conversion is a very difficult issue. It's a very controversial issue because there are two camps which have different kinds of opinions. Some claim that we need conversion in order to develop the community. The farmers, on the other hand, some of the farmers, on the other would say, please do not allow our agricultural lands to be converted because it is actually eating up the size, the agricultural lands which are supposed to be intended for food production and food sufficiency. So these are the two contending parties.
Yes.
Those who believe that conversion is contributing to the development, and those who believe that conversion actually defeats the very purpose of our agricultural productivity. So, for as long as there is a law allowing conversion, then it would be difficult for us in the department to make a balancing act on those two contending positions. But what the law also provides is that conversion is allowed, and if any applicant, for that matter, would be able to satisfy all the requirements of the law, which grants them conversion, then we don't have any option because that is, on our part, we are compelled to do so. And that is actually, we have called the attention of some of our legislators are very much interested on this issue of conversion, that if they totally want to stop conversion, then they should make a law disallowing conversion. But of course, this would be contrary to the position of the other parties who believe that conversion is contributory to the development of our.
And going back to the issue of intent, what if the buyer of these lands are known developers?
Yeah,
Is that already an intent?
Well, as I said, of course, when you talk about intent, that is something that is the main prerogative of the courts. The courts are empowered to interpret the meaning of intent, and we are not in a position to do so. If we are to be asked as to what intent means, then probably we can say that the mere fact that there was an act of putting up structures in a piece of land which has not yet been given the conversion order, then definitely these outward acts would definitely a violation of the conversion law, and that is already an intent on our part. But of course, courts would have a different kind of appreciation as to what intent means. So that is beyond our jurisdiction.
Last question na lang
Before we take
a break. What has the DAR done to amend this law? But before you answer that, we will pause for a short break.
We'll be back after
We'll be back
this.
after a few minutes.
Viber is the free and secure way to connect with friends and family anywhere. Send messages and make phone and video calls for free. Download Viber now.
Magsha-shopping na lang ako!
Hashtag 143SM. Call to deliver.
Hello, can I get the following? One pink chair, bed sheets, na pink yung sofa, tapos slide, size 8, pajamas na blue. Oh, don't forget my...
Hashtag 143SM. Call to deliver.
Wait lang. Okay ba yan?
Anything at the SM store, ma'am.
Call to deliver. Call.
Kuya, pwede rin ba ako magpa-deliver sa ate ko sa Taguig, tapos sa friend ko sa Davao, tsaka sa... cancel ko sa Lipa? Okay ba yan?
Kahit saan po, pwede kami
Call
mag-deliver.
to deliver. Call. Hashtag 143SM. Call to deliver. Hashtag 143SM. Call to deliver. Call. Hashtag 143SM. Hashtag 143SM. Call to deliver.
Call na rin kayo.
Call to deliver.
Good morning, sir. How may I help you?
Bakit kailangan ko pang pumunta sa bangko?
Kung nga naman, sir, ba't kailangan pang pumunta sa bangko?
Why not get a UB app so you can do all these without going to the bank? Bank the way you live. Union Bank.
And now, nagbabalik pa rin po ang Straight Talk kasama ang ating special guest for this morning, Agrarian Reform Secretary John Castriciones. So, Coffee, yung question mo before we took a break.
Yeah, itanong natin kayo na is, ano yung mga initiative na ginawa ng DAR para maamyendahan yung batas ng conversion?
And ano yung naging response ng ating legislators regarding yung mga difficulties nga sa batas concerning agrarian
particularly
reform?
yung mga batas na pinirmahan ng ating ng kasalukuyang administrasyon to further give teeth sa DAR.
Yeah, Comfy and Tina, no? There were some initiatives that were actually done in the past administration trying to extend the coverage of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. Because as I said earlier, the serving of the notice of coverage has ended way back 2014. So the lands that we are covering right now are those which have been served with the notice of coverage prior to 2014. And because of that, some of the legislators wanted to expand it, to extend it, so that we can still acquire lands or privately acquired lands which have not been served with the notice of coverage. But the problem is these laws have not been passed and still pending before Congress. And that is the reason why under this administration, because we are really very much interested to help our farmers, there were some laws passed in order to see to it that other lands other than privately acquired lands can also be distributed. One of which is the Executive Order number 75, which was signed by President Rodrigo Roa III, wherein even government-owned lands which are idle can now be acquired and can be distributed to our farmers. And this means that, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say a certain university was initially allocated a parcel of land. Now, let's be specific. One of which is the University of Southern Mindanao. They have been given around 7,000 hectares, and yet they have only utilized around 500 hectares or 1,000 hectares of the land. And so what happened was that we covered these lands which have been idle for the longest time, where they have not utilized the same. And only a month ago, we were able to cover it. And this is actually located in Arakan Valley in North Cotabato. And you know what is the situation in North Cotabato. There are some insurgency problems there. And one of the reasons, of course, is because of the land problem. And so what we did was we acquired these government-owned lands we covered it, and we were able to acquire around 3,035 hectares, and we were able to distribute it to our farmers. And the farmers are really very happy about this. And because of that, we are actually expanding the coverage of these government-owned lands, idle lands, to some other departments and government agencies, which have been originally allocated with government-owned lands, but eventually have not been able to utilize the same. And this is under EO 75. Now, another one is the split program.
Yes.
The split is what we call as the parcelization. You know, the past administrations have had a penchant of covering lands, but placing them under what we call as collective title, collective CLOAs. So let's say there are around 1,000 farmers occupying a certain land, but in order to drumbeat the so-called accomplishment that they have, they will only issue one CLOA, which is a collective CLOA. And all the names of these farmers are there in that collective CLOA. So as per their accomplishment, they were able to distribute a big portion of land. But the problem is, these farmers are having difficulties amongst themselves because they cannot identify which portion of the land is theirs. So instead of giving solution to the problem of the lack of land of the farmers, they're actually compounding the problem because the farmers themselves are now fighting against each other, claiming that this portion is mine, that portion is mine, until such time that it erupts into violence. And that is a big problem. That's the reason why under this administration, we have adopted what we call as we have introduced, a program which is now called the split program. And the purpose of which is to parcelize all these collective CLOAs which have been issued in the past administrations. Coffee and Tina, do you know how big that area which were titled under collective CLOA? 1,200,000 hectares.
Saang lugar po yan?
2 billion hectares.
So this is scattered around the country.
Saang lugar?
Around the country. And because of that, there have been so many problems that have arisen because of these collective CLOAs. And you know, to further complicate the situation, because of these collective CLOAs, the farmers are unable to pay their amortizations with land bank. And therefore, the government are deprived of the so-called income that should have been received from our farmers because of the amortizations that they should have paid. You know, because all these lands which have been acquired from the landowners have to be paid by the government. And in return, the farmers have to pay a little amortization just so that they would be able to settle the amount that have been advanced by the government. So that is the situation. And secondly, local government units are unable to collect taxes because of these lands, because the lands are not identified as to which portion of the collective CLOA are owned by the farmers. Third, there are no economic growth within the area because the farmers cannot enter into loans, they cannot enter into any transaction at all because they don't have a title of the lands that they till. They cannot even avail of any services sometimes from private and government institutions because there are no proof that they own a certain parcel of land. That is the reason why right now we have this split program in order to address all these issues.
Can you cite specific na property owner ng mga collective CLOAs na yan?
Na pag sinabi mo collective CLOAs, Comfy, ibig sabihin,
ito yung naipamigay na, sir.
I mean po, Secretary,
magsasakayan,
sinipinagbilhan, halimbawa, lupain ni ganito, under siya ng isang collective CLOAs. Ganyan ba ninyo ginawang scheme sa Hacienda Luisita?
Well, Hacienda Luisita was covered during the past administration. Mga past chance, and definitely there have been some problems of that sort.
Because of the collective CLOA.
Oo, may mga collective CLOA, may mga individual, ganun halo-halo. But, you know, what is a good news about this administration is that the last remaining portions of Hacienda Luisita, which have not yet been covered, were already fully distributed under our term, under my term, under the term of President Duterte. Yung 100, if I'm not mistaken, mga 115 hectares have been covered during this administration, have been totally distributed to the farmers. Ito na yung pinaka-last portion. Ngayon, yung ibang portions which have been distributed in the past, yun na nga, we have heard about some problems about that. I'm having it investigated, that those lands which have been previously distributed to our farmers are now being owned by some businessmen or by some officials whom we are trying to identify. And once we are able to prove that there was really an acquisition on the part of this businessman of these lands formerly originally awarded to our farmers, then we can get it back and we can redistribute it to farmers who are really genuinely interested to till the soil.
So, Brother John, under the split program or the support to parcelization of land to individual title, if I understand it correctly po, there's a loan package involved in this split program?
Oo, meron tayo, Tina. As a matter of fact, not only for split, but all agrarian reform beneficiaries. As a secretary of the Department of Agrarian Reform, I'm also one of the members of the board of directors. No, I'm also a director, of the board. And because of this, we have designed some programs wherein all farmers can borrow as much as 50,000 pesos. And also, they are only given an interest of 6% per annum. So kung nakahiram ka ng 50,000 pesos in a year, that is only 3,000 pesos in interest. Divided by 12, siguro mga 200 plus lang per month ang babayaran mo per interest. So that's good enough. Instead of our farmers going to mga 5-6 wherein the interest is really usurious. Kawawa ang mga farmers natin if they borrow money from the 5-6 because in the end, all their toil for a year will just go into the hands of this businessman, scrupulous businessman who would gain profit from the difficulties, miseries, and woes of our farmers.
Actually, hindi lang 5-6 ang problema ng mga farmers, di ba? Ang pinakamalaking problema nila, yung panagtanim ka, bibilhin agad ng mga negosyante sa lugar nila.
At way below
So kung ano man ang
the price.
Kung ano man ang yield ng sakahan mo, kanya lahat 'yon.
Yeah. Coffee, ito sinasabi mo, mga middleman lang ang nakikinabang.
Yes.
Yung mga middleman, sila yung nakikinabang talaga. Kaya nga, lalong-lalo na kung umutang sila sa 5-6 kasi ang bibili ng mga produkto nila, yung mga nagpautang, yung nagpa 5-6. Kaya kayang-kaya lang baratin yung mga magsasaka natin. So kailangan, we have to provide for our farmers kasi ganito ang istorya kasi niyan, Coffee at saka Tina, no? Our agrarian reform beneficiaries have been for the longest time used to being managed by the landowners.
Yes.
Everything that they need are provided for by the landowners. And when you give them a parcel of land, they don't know how to manage the land because all their lives they've been totally dependent on the landowners. So ngayon, we have to train them. We have to give them some technical know-how on management. We have to empower them by providing them with the funds on how they can start to plant their land. And we also provide them with mechanization and other modern ways of farming. And also we organize them into groups, cooperatives, because there is more power when you are into a cooperative. We call them the Agrarian Reform Beneficiary Organizations. And because of this, it has become a conduit for us to give them more assistance or help. Like for example, nakakapagbigay kami ng traktora kapag kunwari there is a cooperative or arbo. So it would enhance the productivity of their land.
So Secretary, by empowering this new landowners, itong mga farmers natin, it's safe to say that DAR has a partnership or is in cooperation with other concerned government agencies like Department of Agriculture, TESDA,
Yes.
Land Bank, DBP.
Tama ka, Tina. You're right. Meron kami yung tinatawag na yung Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. Na kung saan yung mga magsasaka natin, because of these natural calamities that are ongoing, katulad ngayon yung Kinta at saka yung Rolly, nasisira yung mga produkto nila. And because of that, kapag kunwari binaha o kaya nagkaroon ng El Nino, pagtuyot, wala na silang makukuha doon sa mga itinanim nila. So ngayon, we insure them through the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. Ito libre ito, the premium. They don't have to pay any premium at all. All they have to do is to register themselves in the RSBSA of the Department of Agriculture, and all these agrarian farm beneficiaries, once they would report and that their plants have been destroyed because of the natural calamities, they're able to collect from the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation.
So, paano, how does this crop insurance work? Kapag ka na, full coverage ng ng losses?
Ang alam ko dyan, they're entitled to 3,000 pesos per hectare.
Okay.
So, balikan natin.
That's good enough. Makakatulong na yun, Comfy, kahit pa paano.
Balikan natin yung yung kanina na yung mga split programs, yung executive order na yung pinapayagan ng mga government land to be distributed. Diba? These are solutions na nakita ng administration because of your frustration sa mabaga na pagpasa ng mga kinakailangang batas para mapigilan yung illegal na conversion. So, and yung bang mga ganitong issue na ipaabot na sa kay Pangulo. At paano natin may mga ba tayo, may mga lobbying na ginagawa sa legislators para agarang maipasa yung mga batas na kinakailangan natin para mas lalong mapatapang o maging epektibo yung ating Agrarian Reform Program?
Well, Comfy, Tina, meron ngayong pending na batas. Ginagawa bill sa Kongreso, sa House of Representatives, na kung saan merong proposal si Congresswoman Roman, na kung saan they would like to pass a law entitled the new, improved, and enhanced comprehensive agrarian reform program or something like that, wherein they are trying to correct the flaws of the CARP. Because we must admit, of course, there is no such thing as a perfect man-made system or a program or a law, and they would like to improve it by correcting the flaws. And we are actually being asked to make inputs as to how we would be able to improve the delivery of the comprehensive agrarian program in a more competent and a more successful way. So maganda yung proposal nila, but of course that is beyond our jurisdiction. It depends whether the House would be able to pass that bill, and if the Senate would likewise concur with the proposal that this law will be passed in Congress.
So, Brother John, given that agrarian reform is one of the major thrusts of President Duterte, with this proposed law, sa tingin mo, is it forthcoming for him to certify this as urgent, if ever?
Well, I suppose so, because the President has been very serious in the implementation and of the comprehensive agrarian reform program. As a matter of fact, prior to the pandemic, every time that there is a distribution of CLOA in the different regions, he's stated that he's always present.
Yes.
And he's always there with me, distributing personally the certificate of land ownership awards to our farmers. And of course, at this point in time, because of the pandemic, probably they are trying to evaluate as to which laws have to be prioritized in order to address the concerns of our citizens. And hopefully, the President might certify that as urgent. Certify that bill. But of course, that depends on the discretion of the President. I think he's in the best position to decide whether to act on it and certify the said bill.
Napaka-interesante ng mga pinag-uusapan natin, and I'm just so engrossed kasi before I would just write about it, pero now that having dear Secretary explain to us about it,
napaka-interesante ng agrarian reform kasi ang bansa natin is ang agricultural country, let's face it, at agriculture pa rin ang mag-aahon sa atin sana sa ating kahirapan. So sa ngayon, magkakaroon muna ulit ng isang break. Mag-break tayo muli para muli natin kausapin si Secretary Castriciones.
Araneta City, home to the country's first indoor shopping mall, the world's original Thrilla, and the first ever Bini Bini pageant. Now a place for your first win, your first catch, your first home, your first big break, your first date, and even your first love. Araneta City, the city of firsts.
Click, click, That's it, never thought self-service can be this slick. Modify plans in a snap, walang hirap, it's a wrap. Just tap the app, now you can check, view, subscribe, renew. Help and support for you. Out with the Ring apps are the in thing, you know what to do. Globe at home and Globe One, all in the Globe app na yan. Self-service and easy to use, mas okay tayo dyan. Globe at home and Globe One, all in the Globe app na yan. Instant response, no hold time pa, wala nang hintayan. Download Globe at home and Globe One app, all in the Globe app na yan. Download the Globe One and Globe at Home apps from Google Play Store and Apple App Store now. Download Globe at Home and Globe One app, all in the Globe app na yan.
And we're back here on Straight Talk. Kasama pa rin natin si Agrarian Reform Secretary John Castriciones. So partner, puro land reform yung pinag-uusapan natin at talagang ang haba na nung napag-usapan natin doon. But I guess not too many people know na
meron pa ibang mga mandato.
Oo, na hindi lang tungkol sa land reform.
Meron din pala silang kakayahan na ng magresolba ng mga kaso, mga issues about the implementation of the land reform. So, Secretary, ano ba mga kaso ang pwedeng dinggin ng DAR sa ilalim ng mandato nyo?
Okay, Confi and Tina, before I would discuss that, I'd just like to give you a little background.
Okay.
When I came in as a Secretary of the Department of Agrarian Reform, the first sight that I saw when I entered the premises of the DAR are farmers encamped in front of the department. Siguro
circle,
So occupy the sidewalks.
For the longest time.
Yes.
Pero ngayon, wala na kayo nakikita, di ba?
Wala na. Malinis
Wala na
na.
kayo nakikita. So, I tried to analyze the situation. What is the reason why farmers encamp in front of our department? You know, I found out that for the longest time, there have been so many cases pending before the Department of Agrarian.
Naupuan.
Meron pa ang kaso, panahon pa ni, if I'm not mistaken, Conrado Estrella, grade 6 pa lang ako noon, nung panahon na yun. Meron pang kaso na as way back when. So, because of that, we embarked on a program which we dubbed as the Zero Backlog. Zero Backlog. You know, the reason why farmers feel that they are being cared for by the government is because there have been so many cases pending. And then because of these cases, the land acquisition and distribution does not move. Diba? Because of this, they always complain that we are not being given the attention by the government. And so what we did was we embarked on a zero backlog, and because of this, ito figures, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me right, siguro mga 78,000 cases ang pending yan, parang gano'n, nationwide.
Nung dumating kayo, 78,000.
Nung dumating ako.
Dating back to past administrations and past...
Since, sabi ko nga sa'yo, panahon pa ni Conrado Estrella. yung mga papel nga, parang nabubulok na yung mga...
Nagdidilaw-dilaw na ba, Brother John? Nagdidilaw.
But because of that, because of our zero backlog, now it's almost zero.
Wow.
Of course, we cannot really reach zero kasi nga, every year, every month, every day, there are some cases being filed. So, nakakuha it's like a cycle, di ba? Pero we are happy to tell you that right now, there are only very few cases pending before the Department of Agriculture. And there is no reason for them to complain because all these cases have already been addressed to. Kaya ang problema kasi, yung iba naman, they're not contented with our decision. They go to higher courts. They go to the regional trial court. They go to the Court of Appeals. They go to the extent of going to the Supreme Courts. Wala na kami doon. They even go to the Office of the President. But as far as cases pending before the department, we are happy to announce that most of the cases have already been resolved. And because of this, our farmers believe that the government really takes care of them and that we are attending to their needs. Yun ang magandang balita po dito.
Ano mga kaso to, Secretary?
May mga controversial po bang kaso dito?
Ito, number one is of course yung tinatawag natin na agrarian law implementation or your ALI cases. So ibig sabihin, lahat ng anything that has something to do with operations. Kunwari, mali yung pag-process ng operations, farmers and landowners can file cases. So we have to resolve them. Alam mo naman dito sa Pilipinas, isang metro o isang tipalan ng lupa na hindi pinagkasunduan, nagpapatayin ng tao.
Actually.
Diba? And because of that, we really have to resolve them. Otherwise, this friction between the landowner and the farmers would exist. And another thing is, sometimes even the farmers versus farmers are fighting each other. Sabi ng isang farmer, ako dapat ang nakapadat eh. Sabi naman ng isa, hindi, kami, grupo namin. So you can just imagine the situation we are in the department. We are at the middle. Kailangan nasa gitna kami. So dalawang puwersa ang nag-uuntugan dito. Kami palaging naiipit sa gitna. And we really have to resolve it judiciously, equitably, with fairness and competence. Otherwise, we will always be complained. We will always get the brunt of the complaints. So yan, ali cases, we have the cancellation cases. May mga lands which have been covered in the past, which according to some parties, either landowner or farmers, that it should have not been issued with a CLOA because there is a violation of the law. So we have to review them because they have the right to complain, claiming that the coverage of the land is not proper, it's contrary to law. So we have to review the same. So there are so many cases. So meron kami yung mga special alley cases, yung mga exemption. Sinasabi ko kanina sa exemption, exclusion, at saka ito pa conversion. Ang pinaka-worst lahat dyan yung conversion kasi talagang very controversial yung conversion na yan. But we are able to manage. Kaya ang ginawa ko dyan, nag-create ako ng tinatawag na Land Use Conversion Committee para isa collegial body para talagang mapag-aralan ng gusto yung kaso na yan, and therefore it cannot be the subject of criticism and sasabihin nila may bias or something like that. Therefore, it's a committee, it's a collegial body, and therefore it has been really studied upon by this committee before they either approve or disapprove any application pending before them.
Natutulog pa ba kayo, Brother John?
Alam mo, nung ginagawa namin yung zero backlog, there was a time na for several months we have to be up and awake up to 2 o'clock in the morning just to finish all these cases.
So,
and it paid off. We are very happy despite despite going out of our yung comfort zones namin. We are able to address all these issues, and right now yung mga ibang mga opisyalis namin, lalo na sa Darab, yung Agrarian Court namin dyan, masayang-masaya sila kasi yung dating mga kwarto nila na punong-puno ng mga files na way back when, ngayon clear na.
Mukhang opisina na, Secretary.
Mukhang opisina na. You are welcome to visit para makita nyo na clear na lahat at maliwalas ng tignan.
Ang dami-dami nating comments from our viewers. Kaya lang, naubusan na tayo ng oras, Secretary. Pasensya na po.
Opo.
Hindi natin sila kayong basahin.
Opo. So, Secretary, with less than 2 years left in the Duterte administration, what else is in the pipeline for DAR? At after that po, your message sa ating mga kababayan.
Right now, we are actually concentrating on the support services, especially during the time of the pandemic. I've been going around the country, despite the threat of pandemic against our health, for that matter, because we're not also shielded or covered. Even if we are government officials, we're also prone to being infected by the virus. But despite that, we are going around. And the thing is, we have now a program which we call the Door-to-Door. And this is the first of its kind because I am bringing the CLOA personally to the farmers in their farmlands. I go to their farmlands or to their houses. I knock on their doors. I deliver the CLOA to their doors and tell them that the government cares for them. Now, the purpose of this program is to give them hope that despite the pandemic, the government is really concerned about the welfare of our farmers. And we would like to make them believe that they have not committed any mistake in choosing this kind of job of being farmers or this commitment. Because, you know, we really are dependent to our farmers when it comes to our food sufficiency, food supply, and food production. Without the farmers, it would be difficult for our economy to survive. Although at this point in time, I agree with the president when he said that agriculture is the weakest link. And so there is really a reason for us to give more time, give more effort, give more funds, give more attention to agriculture, because I think this is the last frontier of our survival. most especially right now that we are faced with pandemic. So I hope that we would have a different kind of mindset now to our agriculture, because at present we all know that without agriculture it would be difficult for our country to survive. In fact, even the first world countries are greatly affected, and without any agricultural sector that backs them up, I'm sure they will be confronted with so many problems and miseries amongst their people.
Yan. So, Brother John, before we conclude today's program, ang inyo pong mensahe sa ating mga kababayan.
Mga minamahal ko pong mga kababayan at mga minamahal nating magsasaka, ako po ay naniniwala na kapag tayo po ay nagtutulong-tulong at kapag tinulungan din natin ang ating mga magsasaka sa kanilang napiling hanap buhay, ay sigurado pong magkakaroon po tayo ng mapayapa at maunlad na bayan. Alam niyo po, lahat po ng mga bansang ngayon po ay maunlad, katulad po ng mga first world countries. Ang isa po sa mga dahilan kung bakit sila naging first world countries because they have a very stable agricultural economy. Kung tayo po sana ay magkaroon po ng ganitong pananaw sa ating agrikultura, na huwag po nating tatalikuran, itiwanan ang ating agrikultura, pagkus bigyan natin ng tulong ang ating mga magsasaka para mahalin nila ang pagsasaka, sigurado po ay magiging maunlad po ang ating bansa. Kaya sana po magtulungan tayo. Itong pandemyang ito, lilipas din po ito sa tulong po ng ating Panginoong Diyos. Ang kailangan lang po natin ay magkaisa tayo, magtulungan tayo upang makamtan natin ang tunay na kapayapaan at tunay na pagunlad ng ating bayan. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat at magandang umaga po.
Maraming salamat, Secretary.
Maraming salamat po, Secretary, at magandang umaga rin. Marami tayong natutunan ngayon. No? Importante talaga na palakasin natin ang sektor ng agrikultura.
Especially now that we are faced with the crisis.
Sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay by empowering the farmers, bigyan natin sila ng lupa. Ibigay sa kanila yung kanilang lupang sinasaka na taon na nilang sinasaka, hindi pa kanila hanggang ngayon. So, with that, Tina, maraming salamat. Magandang umaga.
Magandang umaga sa inyo. At this has been another edition of Straight Talk. Again, I'm Tina Maralit.
And I'm Confi Manalo.
See you again next time.
Mga bayarin sa bahay.
Kahit kami, nagtaka sa biglang laki ng electricity bill namin. Huwag pong mangambang maputulan. Sinisigurado ng Meralco na walang disconnection hanggang September.
Estimated bills lang ang natanggap natin ng March, April, at para sa ilan, May. Dahil sa lockdown, isang tabi to para hindi na maguluhan.
Ang May o June ay actual meter reading na. Kung May nagka-actual reading, ibabawas dito ang huling reading bago mag-ECQ. Yan lang po ang ating babayaran hanggang 3 buwang konsumo.
Kung estimated reading sa May at June nagka-actual reading, ibabawas din dito ang huling reading bago mag-ECQ. Yan lang po ang ating babayaran hanggang 4 na buwang konsumo. Walang labis. Tandaan, kung ano lang na konsumo,
Yun lang ang babayaran.
ako po si Mateo G.
At ako naman po si Sarah G.
G?
G!
Dito sa amin, dignidad ng bawat Valenzuelano ang aming